Hello students. Today we are going to machine our rails and stiles. Stiles vertical, rails are horizontal parts for our doors. Okay, so the framework around the raised panel. You can see I've got the two raised panels here. We need the rails and stiles for each of the two doors. Okay, had a little issue today when I went to start running them through the planer. They have to be made as a set. Okay, so they're all the same thickness and the same lengths, 4 rails, 4 stiles, the same length as each other. So I'm going to show you that process again today for the nightstand. All right, as you can see, this one got really chewed up in the planer, so I've got a technician coming out to adjust the in-feed out-feed rollers. It's not working correctly, and I actually got this one turned sideways. As I fed it through, it turned sideways, and you can see it started just chewing it up. And then the next one I sent in, I didn't know that that was stuck in the machine, kicked back on me, so it's way out of adjustment. So we're going to be using a tabletop planer instead of the big industrial planer over here. Until that gets fixed, we've got a backup, which is really nice. I'm going to show you how to use that backup today. All right, let me set this up on my head and we will get going. So that process, we for the rails and stiles, okay, we would start with the long board, right? And before we lay out any parts on a long board, which we do before we cut it up, right? You can't just take a board over and start cutting on it. Okay, I need to see what it's being used for, how you're utilizing it. And even before that, we have to calculate the board feet. So here's my long board. It's a 3-inch by 8 foot or 96 inches long. It's quantity times thickness times width times length divided by 144 gives you the board feet. So 1 inch thick, right? Quantity is 1, thickness is 1, width was 3, length is 96. We divide it by 144. This board would be 2 board feet. If I cut it in 12-inch sections, we would have a 12 by 12, 2 of them when we were finished, 2 board feet. All right, so you do that first when I give you a board for any project. Calculate the board feet. Then we lay out that board. I'm not going to let you cut that board until I know what it's being used for and how you're utilizing it. So this is for my next parts, my face frame, because I've already got the rails and stiles over there. Okay, so I've laid it out. The mark is the rough size, so this is finished size. You write the part name, the finished size of each part that you're laying out. So my first face frame stile, the vertical face frame, is going to be 27 3/4. So I measured 28 3/4. And again, 28 3/4, adding an inch, rough length. And then my face frame rail, horizontal member, was supposed to be 21 1/2. So it's, that mark would be, 20 1/2 is finished. So the mark is at 21 1/2. Okay, and then this you'll have to tell me what you're using the last piece for. It wasn't long enough for another face frame rail, so I've got those over here, but I could find another part on my plan to put here. Before you cut this up, I'd want to see what it's being utilized for. Once it's all marked and approved, you're ready to cut it into rough lengths, right? And then you know the process from there. Well, I've got my rails and stiles here I've been working on. They're cut to rough length and to rough width on the table saw. So we added an extra inch and at least a 1/2 inch in width. All right, and I'm planing them all as a set, all my rails and stiles as a set with this tabletop planer. I've already sent them through multiple times. This is the last pass. Okay, here's our adjustment for our depth. Okay, if I go clockwise, that's making it thinner. If I go counterclockwise, that's setting the machine up to take a wider board. And then this is our lockdown so the handle doesn't move. I've got it set to my last 3/4 inch pass. Let's turn it on. I've got my bag ready to collect the dust chips. It's not set up to our dust collection system. So I'm going to also turn on this air filtration system. So any dust that gets in the air, hopefully right here, it will take care of that. So let's turn it on. Like I say, I've already ran several passes. Roughest side up. Last pass. And they will then all be the same thickness. What's our next step? After we clean them, we got to surface sand them, don't we? Only feed one through at a time. It only cuts on the top face. Roughest side up. As a set. All of these parts for these projects, especially the nightstand, right? A lot of the parts have to be exactly the same for it to come together, like the door parts, right? Rails and stiles. And also, the next thing we'll be doing is the face frame, which this is the stile for the face frame. And then we've got 3 rails, a bottom and a middle and a top. All of those have to be made as a set. Okay, so on our side we would want to make these rails and stiles as a set as well. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. I've got my set of rails and stiles for the doors. Let's take them over. Did I turn that thing off? Let's take them over to our surface sander and sand them as a set down to 3/4. And I've got the machine set up. Let's turn it on. And here we go. Roughest side up. Make sure I've got my table ready to catch. This is saving us a lot of work. One piece at a time, right? So we don't have a kickback. It sounds and feels like it's taken off about the right amount. We've often said we don't want to go past 50 amps. Parts here, and I've got some extras as well to set up my raised panel routers to get them dialed in, so you guys won't have to make extra parts. Notice I'm putting them one at a time, and I'm using the whole belt. All right, let's go collect them. Let's take a measurement, see if we're close to 3/4. We're right at 3, just a hair over. So I'm going to keep the same setting, and I'm going to send them through on the other side, and we'll call it good. So they'll all be exactly the same thickness. What's the next step? After we get them cut to rough size, planed to thickness, surface sanded smooth, what's our next step? in creating our rails and stiles? Do you know? Well, we need the 4-step process, don't we? To cut them to size. Finish size. Right now they're rough size. Do you remember the 4-step process? Which is critical to getting them cut to size and squared. Because if they're going to fit together in our box, they have to be square, don't they? Well, we join an edge is step 1, straightest edge on each part. Then we take it over the table saw for step 2. We rip them to width, which in this case, they're all going to be 2 inches. That's step 2. Step 3 and 4 are on the radial arm saw, where we square an end, and then we cut them to the same, to the length. All right, so we'll have 2 different lengths. One for the rails, one for the stiles. And we'll have, what, 8 of each. So we're gonna have to cut them the same length. That's step 4. I'll show you how to use a stop block to do that. We'll turn this off. And we are ready for our 4-step process. Over to the joiner. We'll join our edge. So, straightest edge down, typically. Step number 1 on all of our parts.